nothing but faith. There's things far too great that I want to accomplish. I'm hoping 25 hours a day, but something good works out, and I'm just like, dang. Think everything's gonna be okay. Yeah, I'm like, dang. Think you might just know the way. I'm like, dang.
Welcome to Dang.
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 How you doing? I'm Todd Bridges.
I'm Bettijo Bridges, and our guest today grew up alongside Todd in Hollywood in the 1980s. Today we're joined by Dion Mial.
That's me.
Yes.
That's
He's
me.
a designer and creative director whose roots run deep in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dion grew up in the same neighborhood as Todd and became best friends with Gary Coleman.
Yeah.
These two right here can tell you what it was really like growing up black in Hollywood in the 70s and 80s. And trust us, Dion's got some stories.
Yeah.
That's why he's here.
Yes.
It's surreal to be here. I mean, who knew back when we were kids that we'd be sitting here talking on Todd's podcast?
No,
you know?
who knew?
Like
that I'd be
like grown-ups.
I'd be the sole survivor still alive. Who
The
knew that?
sole survivor.
Yeah,
Right.
no one knew that.
That
I
is
didn't.
unbelievable. after what you've been through.
Yeah, I never knew I'd still be here.
But
Exactly.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
So
That's
how-
who you are.
How did you guys meet? I've been curious about that.
You know, back when the show started, it was like I think it was maybe the second week into production.
Yeah.
My mother at the time headed up the office that provided all the studio teachers for child actors in Hollywood
okay.
back then.
Yeah.
And she called me one day from work, and I was at home doing homework, and she says, you know, get your homework done early because I need to go over and audit a set, this new show called Diff'rent Strokes. And I hear there's this kid called Gary Coleman who is phenomenal, but I need to go and meet with the teacher, so you should come along with me. I did. And it was that night that I actually met them.
Yeah.
Both of them.
And that's when I realized he lived in our neighborhood.
That's so
Yeah.
fun that you guys ended up.
We lived on opposite hills. I was
Yeah.
in Baldwin Hills.
Yeah.
He was in Baldwin Vista.
Yeah.
But it's basically
It's
the same
same
neighborhood.
neighborhood, yeah.
And we had a ball. I mean, and what actually brought us closer together was I happened to mention I had a go-kart.
That's exactly right. And I've always wanted to go get time. My mom wouldn't give me one then.
Probably because of the danger on those hills.
Well,
I bet,
no,
I
she
bet
was-
you could
part
get
of
some
it,
I
speed.
got
Absolutely.
one later on, yeah. But not.
Well, and
yeah.
then Todd is Todd. So
I would have taken that thing everywhere. I'd have
You
done
got-
it, yeah.
How much speed would you guys get on those hills? I bet you could get up there and.
I had souped up 5 horsepower as opposed to 3.
Yeah.
And top speed, Todd and I were like as skinny as spiders.
Yeah.
You could get us on it, and I think I reached a top speed of like somewhere between 50 and 55 miles per hour.
Whoa,
Those things
that's
are
actually
fast.
so much faster
Yeah.
than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had
No
slick
wonder your
racing
mom
tires
was
on it too,
resistant.
so yeah.
My mom, well, she was resisting me because I was like crazy. I'd do anything. I tried everything. Go out the hills, I would do anything. So that's
We had
That
we had
is
a
so
ball.
fun.
He came
Yeah, we
over. He
did.
was like, "Oh my god!" And then Gary found out.
Yeah.
He's like, "What? You went over to Dion's and rode his go-kart?"
Oh, yeah.
All bets were off then.
I just love it because you guys were just kids.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I was 14, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then after that, did it become a regular thing for you to go to set and visit and hang out with the other kids?
Yeah. I was there pretty frequently. Not every week for the first season. Second season, I was there a lot.
Yeah.
Second season on through 8. That was we all just grew closer.
Yeah.
We grew closer over the course of that first season, and at the end of the first season, I did Gary's first movie of the week called The Kid from Left Field. He created a small featured role for me in that one. I played the Bat Boy for the San Diego Padres, and we were down in San Diego shooting on location for a week, and that was when he and I
Got really.
actually had the time to bond. We were the only kids on the set.
Yeah.
So, you know, and Todd and I were already solid, so.
Todd, what was the schedule like as kids on set? So what was like? Take us
you
through
go-
like a
you-
week or something.
You go to school in the morning from usually 8 to 12, and then you take a lunch, and then from 1 to 5 you work.
And you guys did it the live in front of a studio audience. You guys would work on an
That was on
episode
Fridays.
a week,
Yeah,
right?
no, we would, one episode, but you shoot 2 shows. You shoot I think it was a 5:30 show and a 7-something show.
So you would be like practicing that episode all week.
Well, practicing the Monday through
rehearsing, I guess.
Wednesday, and then Thursday was blocking, actual camera blocking, and then you try to do half run-throughs and like that, and then Friday, and then you did a full run-through on Thursday afternoon, and then on Friday you shot it.
Okay.
You came in a little
You
later,
shot it.
came in usually at 12, went to school from 12 to like 3, and then you started
You
working.
had the audience come in and
Yeah.
you guys actually filmed it.
Yeah.
And you filmed it twice so they'd have a couple options, I guess,
Yeah.
as they're cutting the
Yeah.
show together.
They called one show the dress show and the
Yeah.
other show the air show.
Yeah.
And then they would just cut the best
Yeah.
of both shows
yeah.
together.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted you to explain that because I think a lot of people won't realize kind of what the structure was like. I know I didn't know until Todd had explained
Well, and
it.
that's how they used it. It's different now. They still do that, but I don't think it's the same anymore.
I think
Because most
more
shows
for, like-
back then it was situational comedy. Now it's more like setup joke.
Yeah.
In most of these comedy shows.
And that was like the multicam in front of a
Yeah,
studio audience
yeah.
sort of
Right.
setup.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They worked long days.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they were
And 9
there
months
were
out of the year.
there were legal restrictions because they were
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
They had to have their 3 hours of school.
Yeah.
But you know that could have been rigorous.
Yeah.
But the good thing, and I remember it so well, and there's so many stories. Gary and Todd and Dana, I was so privileged and lucky to be a part of that family. I mean, very often Gary always called me, you're like the cast member that never did a show.
Oh, yeah.
You're like the other, because I was always there and I was friendly with all of them, but they were so close. They were so close, and back in the early days of Strokes, when roller skating came back in,
Oh,
they
yeah.
all had roller skates. And they
Oh, yeah.
skated around the lot.
And then
Gary and
everyone-
Todd were building spaceships.
Oh yeah.
You
I
know?
I think
I
we
wish-
tortured everybody that said flying around on our roller skates fully miles
You
an hour.
probably did. You
Oh, yeah.
probably
Oh, they
drove
did.
them crazy.
Everybody
we had
did.
nothing else, but it was every kid from every set because they had Facts of Life there. Silver
Everybody.
Spoons, everybody just did it because that's all.
And
what else
Hello
was there
Larry.
to do? Hello Larry. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
Kim Richards and everybody had skates, so
Yeah.
they had a good time.
We did.
That
They
is
really did.
really, really fun.
They did.
Yeah, the first 3 years were great, and then after that, things changed. Willie Coleman came down, Gary's father, and it was not the same after that.
I wish you guys had cell phones with cameras so that we could see
No, I don't.
from back.
I'm glad they didn't have cell phones with cameras.
Why?
Man, some of the stuff that me and Dana got into, we didn't need to be filming that.
We might need an example.
No, that's all the more reason. Because today it would be comedy.
Yeah,
Back
it would be.
then,
So great.
she was so mischievous.
Yeah.
Remember when she drove through the Universal attractions?
I told my wife that was like part of the sign they got her getting her fired later on.
So we're talking about that tunnel that
The
you
tunnel
can
that
go
spins.
She
through.
went through.
she thought that
yes.
you can drive through there, but that's not
Because
how.
you go on the tour bus.
Yeah,
Right.
but the tour bus doesn't drive through it. It stops and the thing hooks it and pulls it through. So Dana's driving through and she gets sick, pulls over, starts throwing up, and she just like caused $100,000 in damage on that ride. And that one woman, who was that producer?
You
She
had
did not
to
like
love her.
Dana. Who was that producer? Did not like Dana.
I don't remember.
it was a
I
woman.
know it was.
She did not like Dana.
Was
She
it
did not
Rock?
like
Well,
was
that
it
was-
Roxy?
Was it Roxy?
Roxy Wink Evans?
No, was that the black one? No.
No.
Was that the
no.
one with the dark hair?
I don't remember Roxy having dark hair. It probably wasn't Roxy.
Yeah, I know it wasn't Roxy. It was another one that just did not like Dana.
Yeah.
Did not like Dana.
Well,
and
she
that
gave
was,
him
And
a
there
good
were
reason
not a,
then.
that was. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine like not liking Dana.
Yeah, Dana was easy
Dana
to like.
liked everybody.
Yeah.
And she had the most loving spirit. She was mischievous,
Yeah.
but she had the most loving spirit.
Yeah.
I never heard from the day that I met her on set until the day she died. I never heard Dana utter an unkind word
Yeah.
about anybody,
Wow.
which was hard to believe because
Yeah.
she had really good reason to.
Yeah.
But I never did.
Well, she was just really adventurous, and I can get
She
why
was.
with that, with that perspective. She's like, well, of course you can drive through. Those huge vans go through, so
Yeah,
why
she
not
thought
my
that.
little car?
She
Yeah. Me and Gary used
Poor
to play.
Dana.
Me and Gary used to. I don't know if Dion remembers this. Me and Gary used to play with the trams. Whenever the trams would go by, we'd stop and freeze, and people be like, And then
I
we
do
wait till it
remember
get-
that.
And then when it goes past, then we start moving again. And they're like, no, we thought it was fake. They thought it was fake.
This is when they
Oh,
were
yeah.
producing the show at Universal Studios.
Yeah.
They were at Universal Studios for 3 years.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was working as Gary's personal assistant.
Yeah.
So I was actually required to be present a lot. I was going to school. I was in college, but I would go to school in the morning and then show up at the studio later in the day. And they were hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
They got into it.
You guys were like brothers.
Yeah, we were. And his father's what drove the wedge between all of us.
Yeah.
Gary wasn't allowed to hang out with too many black people. So that came to a point of that too.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think it was just a consideration of ethnicity. It was really, Gary was not really allowed or encouraged, in all fairness,
Yeah.
to socialize with other kids.
Yeah.
He just wasn't. I witnessed that myself. Kids would come to his house and, ring the doorbell and say, "Can Gary come out?" And Gary wouldn't answer the door ever, but his father in particular would say, no, Gary doesn't want to be bothered, or Gary's not coming out.
Yeah.
And it hurt kids' feelings. It really did. Todd, actually, and myself, we were the two closest people to him as
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for many, many years. I mean, that's just the
It
way
was
it was.
just adults, and
It
then-
was just adults. That was it.
And that's why he was smarter than people realized, because he just was around adults all of his life.
He was
So his
extremely
vocabulary was
mature
different,
in
yeah.
many, many ways. In many ways, he had a lot of emotional
Yeah.
challenges, and his growth was stunted emotionally in
Yeah.
some ways, but intellectually, Gary was a genius.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was unbelievable. Yeah, we miss him a lot, and I'm glad that when all was said and done, he and Todd
Yeah.
were able to spend some time together again, and
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
and experience the joy of being brothers again.
Oh yeah, I remember when I was pushing him around. We did a show in Tennessee, and I was pushing him around in the wheelchair, and he's like, "Why are you pushing me around?" I said, "Your brother, man. I love you. This is why I'm pushing you around." I go, "I'm fine. I don't care about all the other stuff past. This is today."
During they both had troubles. They
yeah.
had their challenges, and understandably, that creates a divide and separation because you're fighting for your own benefit,
Oh
Yeah.
just to survive
Yeah.
in many ways, both of them.
Yeah.
And that's why I felt so happy, and Gary did too. He felt relieved that the dark cloud had passed
Yeah.
for them. In terms of their relationship in particular, they were reunited, and Gary was really appreciative of that. And I know if Gary were still with us today, I think that relationship would have flourished beyond anything that either one of them would have
Wait,
imagined.
I don't know if I ever told you this or not. Okay, so doing all that whole craziness, I was doing a show in New York, right? And I'm getting on a plane, flying first class. Someone says, "Oh, your brother's on the plane." I go, "Brother Jimmy is not on the plane." I go, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "I'm like, what brother?" I get on the plane and I look, and it's Gary. And at my seat,
I didn't
is
know that.
Right, yeah, my seat is right next to him. Someone set us up. I'm like, somebody didn't set us up. And Gary's like, they didn't set us up. Yep, they set
They
us
saw
up.
the names.
Yes,
They
and
saw
put
the
us-
flight
It was
manifest
like
and said,
it
"Wait,
was like a parent trap.
Gary
Put them
Coleman,
together.
Todd Bridges.
Oh, yeah,
Are we
put 'em-
talking Arnold and Willis?"
Yeah, put us right next
Okay,
to each
wait a
other.
minute. We got.
That was pretty funny.
That's great.
Yeah, it
so you
was pretty
guys,
funny.
where was the flight? How long was the flight?
To New York? Well, from LA, what,
Well,
5
5 and a half
hours?
hours,
Did you
6
guys-
hours.
Did you guys visit?
Oh,
Catch
yeah,
up?
we finally started talking about things kind of catch up there, yeah.
That's
But it was
really
just
cool.
hilarious. It was hilarious. They put us next to each other.
Wow.
I had no idea I got on a plane. You go, your brother's on the plane. I'm like,
Dion,
"What?
did you
Brother's on the
arrange
plane?"
that?
No, I would have.
Yeah, she
I
would.
know.
I would have done something like that, but no, it wasn't me. But I didn't
How
know about that
great
one.
that
yeah,
that just
that's a good
kinda
one.
came together.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will be forever linked. In fact, before we go any further, give me 1 second. I'm going to step over and grab something because
Okay.
unfortunately.
What is that you're bringing out?
Unfortunately, it didn't make it completely unscathed in transit. But
Oh.
I came across something a few weeks ago, right around the time of your birthday.
Really?
And while we're on the subject of who you guys are and who you were to the public and who, thank God, you ended up being, circling back to, I found this, it's absolute evidence of brotherhood. And I'm giving you this. I got to reframe it. I don't know if you have that.
This
No,
is
I don't have
great.
that one.
That
Oh, yeah.
really speaks to
Yeah, we were very close in that point, especially.
who they were for each other.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, we used to torture the producers by. I remember it was one. We went to the Hollywood Magic Shop. We got our director to stop smoking cigarettes.
Garen?
Yeah, no, me and Gary did. Both of us did the first.
No, but Garen?
Yeah, Garen. Oh yeah. He's the second season. Gary used to smoke a lot, right? And
I don't
used
remember
to-
that.
Oh yeah, used to drive me and Gary nuts. So we went to the magic. Lewis took it to the magic shop, and we bought these called cigarette poppers. You stick them in cigarettes, and they blow your cigarettes up. So we were blowing these cigarettes up. He had no idea how it was getting done. We were blowing it up for weeks, right? And then finally, Gary goes, "Okay, Todd, do you know how to unseal the pack?" I go, "Yeah, we got a heat gun. We unsealed a new pack. We put them all in every single one of those." He said Gary said he got home and he was like, "I mean, those lousy kids aren't here to get me now." And he's like, "Pow!" He goes, "I can't quit." And he quit cigarette smoking because of that. It blew up in his house and he was like, "I am done." Because Gary would distract him while I put them all in his thing.
He was a total prankster.
Oh yeah, we were
A
definitely.
total. When I started driving, we'd be out running around and I'd get out of the car and lock him in. You know, he was Gary Coleman. I was afraid if somebody coming and snatching him out of the car, I'd lock him in, and I'd come back to the car, and Gary's sitting in the passenger seat, just looking totally innocent, and I'd get in, put the key in the ignition before we had buttons.
Yeah.
I'd turn it on, and he had turned anything that could be turned on on.
Oh, yeah.
The windshield wipers were going, the radio was turned all the way up loud, the air conditioning was blowing, and of course you turn the ignition on and it all happens. Of course, you know,
were
I'm
just
startled,
like,
and he would fall out in the seat. And that happened constantly with him. Constantly.
Did you start turning everything off before you start the car?
Well, before I could drive, I mean, I had to. I mean, the radio was turned all the way up.
Did he get you more than once?
He actually did, but he was smart enough to have some lag time. He'd wait 6 months and then do it again.
Yeah,
So
we
that you
used
would
to
put your guard down again.
We bought flash powder too one season, and to all the producers that were in there, we rigged I knew how to rig light bulbs to make them flash and throw flash powder and blow up. We rigged every single one of their light bulbs, and they turned the light on. Poof! Like, the thing is gonna blow up, and me and Gary be back there just dying.
And yet
of
it's a
laughter.
mystery why any of them didn't like you guys.
No, they liked us. They liked us.
I got something else I want to
It was interesting. Before we had Garen, though, we had a director that didn't like me or Dana. So the second season coming back, Conrad and all of us got together, and Gary and him were like, you can't come back. We have to get a new director. And that's when we ended up getting Garen Keith, black director.
So that your show was really groundbreaking because of that blending in lead roles of like the interracial blending. Did you guys have unspoken rules or things that you kind of knew you had to like watch?
Well, we got
as minorities
back then,
in Hollywood then.
Back then, the FCC was really strong on certain things you could do and certain things you couldn't do. Like today, like when I first heard cussing on TV, I was like, "What?"
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't believe I was blown away because you couldn't get away back in our day. You could say only certain things.
Standards and practices, as it was commonly known on set.
Yeah.
Constantly keeping things in check.
Oh,
It was very, very stringent. And Strokes was there was nothing like it that had ever been done before. Nothing
It was
like
new
that.
and original, yeah, definitely.
It was truly a standalone piece, and that was long before Cosby.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, Cosby changed the game in terms of how people of color, specifically black people, were portrayed as successful.
Right.
And not just one, but two successful people running a household. And they were, there were all kinds of challenges with the marketing of the show. Todd and folks
we had hate mail.
hate mail, right?
We had hate mail from both sides,
right,
in the beginning. But then everybody just ended up loving the show, and it became a show that went across all races. Everybody loved the show.
Yeah.
So that's what changed everything. But it was. I think what made it different, interesting was the fact that, like, in the first season and a half, Willis would not accept Mr. Drummond, but Arnold kept making him.
Yeah.
And then Willis thought he could be, you know, like a parent, but ended up willing that he was just had to be his brother.
Well,
Yeah.
that was a big episode when you guys finally agreed to stop calling him Mr. Drummond
Yeah,
and calling
it was.
him Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah.
That was a really emotional show, you know, a very
yeah.
special episode. You know?
Yeah.
Of Diff'rent
And then what they
Strokes.
used to do also, if we had an episode that was serious, Conrad would have to come on and talk first before the episode started. Because if it was a serious episode about a serious subject, he'd have to talk and say, this is a serious subject, you know, and tell people what it was, because wanted to make sure that you knew your children. Like nowadays, they don't do that anymore, you know? Because people are used to seeing craziness on shows now. No,
What
wait, I
about-
got mine still.
I was going to ask you.
Yes.
I told you I
look
was
at
bringing
this.
Gary.
Yes.
I
still
told
got
you.
mine, yes.
You
Oh.
do still have it?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
That-
This is one of our original jackets from the second season or first season?
First season.
First season, yeah, that we had, and it was, and you could tell it's older because it's made out of
Satin.
It is so
satin, man.
so silky and soft.
Yes, that's how mine
Look how
is.
small. I wish we had yours to compare the size.
I know.
Oh yeah,
I-
the
We
size
gotta
of mine
take a
is
picture
huge
of them
different.
together.
we got to do it.
Yeah, mine
Yeah.
is mine's at home, so it's in that
Good,
in the box. and
good.
everything, Yeah, yeah. These are like
Wow.
the original set Diff'rent Stroke things. Were like the most amazing thing in the world, man. We wore these, man, and this was like
With pride.
with pride. Sure did. It was great.
With great pride.
I think we all
so
the kids we
cool.
all had them made. I think me and Gary got them made.
They all.
That's right.
And
We
do you have
did.
this one? There were two. Take a look at that one.
Yeah, I think
Wow,
I
I
can't
haven't
find
seen
that
that
one. Somebody
one.
took mine.
That's the
Oh
one
my
with the
goodness.
yeah.
peacock.
Someone took mine. This
Look
one.
at the
Someone stole
peacock
that
on
one.
the
Yeah.
back.
Someone stole my.
Because the
peacock
show
one.
was on NBC for
'Cause it
the
was
first
like,
7
you know,
years.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what's interesting is you'll be interested to know this. I talked to Alan
are
Horn
so
about
special.
8 years ago, and I said, "Why did the show get canceled? What happened?"
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he goes, "Man, we were gonna give you guys a 6-year grace period." I go, 6 years? He goes, "Why?" Because you saved NBC. We were gonna just let the show go on because
It
the Facts
did.
Life went on for 11 years.
It did.
But Gary's people were driving us insane, and we just couldn't take it anymore.
Brandon Tartikoff, you know,
was a
who
great guy, man.
who was a huge executive at NBC
Yep.
and really cut his teeth as an
Yeah.
executive
Yep.
with your show,
Yep.
would always say to Gary, "You guys kept the lights on when
Oh, yeah.
we did not have another successful show."
Yeah.
And it's true. It
Yeah.
was a tremendous success.
That
But-
6-year grace period would have been life saving.
Well, and you know, people, the general public very often forgets that it is called show business.
yes,
Right.
it is.
And to Todd's point, when the business becomes to be when it gets to be just too challenging
Yeah.
and certain negotiations become just untenable,
oh yeah,
they'll shut it down.
yeah.
Yeah.
They'll,
But I-
even now.
But
it's
I was telling my wife before that, it was interesting how when I was on Fish was a top 10 show and got canceled because back then the producers had all the power. And Danny Arnold, Afagoda wanted more money, and they were like, "Nah, we'll just cancel the show," and they canceled the show. Lucky for me though that it got canceled because I had Diff'rent Strokes. I was able to do either Diff'rent Strokes. I had the original, it wasn't called Mork and Mindy. It was called
Right.
Mork from Ork. I had that job. And then the Mickey Mouse Club. I chose right, actually. So,
You
know,
chose
because all
Diff'rent
those,
Strokes,
they
thank
completely
heaven.
changed Mork and Mindy. I was like, man, I ended up seeing the black kid, and I was like, man, I'm glad I changed that. He was in one episode, and that was it. I'm glad I changed that, you know. And then Mickey Mouse Club, you know.
But you know what? We got to get him back on regular series television.
Oh yeah, it'll be
Yes.
soon. It will do that.
He is missed.
Yeah.
So many people ask me, you know,
Yeah.
you know Gary and Todd? Yeah, we grew up together. We're very, very close. And so why is he not on television?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to fix that.
Yeah.
He, you know, people miss you. They
I'll do
really, really
television for
do.
another 10 years, and I'm out.
And then
I'm out.
you do it while you still
Retiring.
can't, while you walk, while you
Yeah.
can still walk.
You're right about that. My wife wants to do it for the money. No,
Well,
You-
that's a lot of motivation
it is a big perk.
because it's good.
You talked about getting like the hate mail and stuff, but
Oh, yeah.
what about Offset? What was it like for you guys?
Offset, we were rock stars. Offset. It was like today. For instance, it's interesting. Today, it's not the same way as it was when we grew up. When we grew up, there were like I became a teen idol. There weren't teen idols like there's not really a teen idol today, not like that. But these teen idols, we used to do things like in Chicago, me and a bunch of other actors, and we'd do like these shows, and we'd have 50,000 girls show up at this place. and they would literally. I remember one time we were going to pump up one of our basketball shows at a high school, and it was me, Stoney Jackson, my brother. I can't think of it. It was one of the big groups, one of those guys, and we were walking to the snow, and all of a sudden we heard. We're like, what is that? We're like, we turn around, and all the girls are running towards us. And Foster Silvers was there. Foster Silvers.
Oh my God.
From the Silver Sing group.
Of course.
So yeah, so Foster Silvers and he goes, rest of us are jumping in the car because we know what's gonna happen if they catch you. We're jumping in the car, and Foster goes, stop! And they stopped, and they looked at me, and all of a sudden they go, and he got hair pulled out, clothes torn apart. We were like, we told you to get in the car, dummy.
But you know what's different? Vastly different today than back then, and it's the obvious. We have social media now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So celebrities have more direct access to the public, and
Yes.
the public has direct access to celebrities.
But I'm glad,
it
though-
wasn't that way.
And it's
many
also,
years
there's
before.
a lot of these different niches too, so it kind of spreads it out.
But I'm also
like he was
glad-
saying, like the concentration.
Yes.
I'm glad we didn't
Yes.
have
When you
social
go turn
media
on,
back then.
you got a couple channels and that's it.
You
and
have worldwide
Yeah.
access
Yeah, you do.
in a matter of seconds
Yep.
yeah.
now. And that's different. You didn't have that.
Yeah,
you
but
could
if
only
we
experience
had that, I would have kids probably in every country. So I'm glad. I am so glad that then I have worldwide access.
I'm
do you-
happy for you,
how do
Betty
you-
Jo. I'm happy. I'm happy that
two
we didn't have
kids.
social media back then.
How do you think Gary would have handled it if he'd had social media? Do you think it would
Well,
have been a good thing? Or
he did. I mean, he.
I mean, as a
Oh, you mean back then?
influencing
Back then,
him
yeah.
growing up.
Oh wow. I
We would
think
have been.
that would have made
me and
him.
Gary would have been posting so many videos, of each other
He
doing
would have
stuff.
had fun with
Oh
it.
yeah.
I think that's what he. I think he would have been pranking a lot on,
Oh yeah.
on social media.
And it would have been a way to make a lot more money than you're even making on the show.
And he would have
Yeah.
monetized it.
We would have monetized that for
Gary
sure.
was always about
He was
Yeah.
a
how does
businessman.
this
Yeah.
translate
Yeah.
into $1.
He
for
would have
me?
loved that to not be able to have to do the show, because even before he passed away, it wasn't as big as it is now.
Right.
It
Social
might
media
have
is
given him
gigantic.
some of that freedom to really hone his
It would've.
voice.
It would've.
Afterwards.
Well,
do
he
you think?
would have, that's a very important word is voice.
Yeah.
I have real ambivalent feelings about social media. I personally, I'm on and I'm off. I kind of try to keep it at arm's length. I have to access it because of what we do.
Right.
But it's a dual-edged sword. Sometimes you become a slave to it.
Yeah.
And I think he would have been very mindful of safeguarding his privacy because he was very fiercely protective of his and other people's privacy.
Yeah.
I mean, when things got tough for Todd in the media, he was angry and frustrated because of a lot of the fallout, but he really felt that there were things being said and spoken and shown and discussed that Todd should have been able to manage privately.
Right.
You know, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
And Todd was going through, and they all were, very human challenges.
But you know something? I think when Gary finally understood, because we talked about this, was when he started going through some really serious challenges and he couldn't manage it. And I was like, see, that's what happened. You can't manage it. You just
Right.
have to hide
Right.
out, buddy.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
he understood finally.
Right.
And, you know, so that one he definitely
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a crash course in
Oh, yeah.
in living in the real world versus a charmed life.
Oh, yeah. But,
Well,
I,
and-
but I
but
tell
at that
Star.
time, I think with the social media aspect, sorry, honey, to interrupt you, but I think at that time, your fate was so much in the hands of other people, and social media does give you at least an opportunity and some power to take back some of that.
Well, that's
probably where, like, I
Well,
think
you
That's
can control,
absolutely
you can't control
true.
the narrative today.
Yeah.
You couldn't
that's right.
control it then.
You could not. You can, and imagine
It's whatever they said.
Yeah, you
Imagine
were
coming up and
powerless, really.
working back in the days of the old studio system.
Oh, yeah.
Where
would've
they
been-
had
oh my
they
gosh.
owned you.
Yeah.
They really owned you. Now, I mean, they were under very, very
Yeah.
rigid agreements, you know, moral clauses and so forth that could just get you fired.
Well, I'll tell you what was
at a
interesting
moment's
was
notice.
way back in the day, this is why they had a lot of these celebrities, they would live on the studio lot. Because when they would mess up, it was on studio lot and nobody talked about it. See, but if they're out in the real world and messed up, feel someone's gonna get a top picture of it. And it's gonna be all over the media.
There was
That's
a lot
right,
more
'cause, like,
control.
Yeah,
They
a lot
had
more
those
control.
apartments. You're right.
Yeah,
Like they would
had-
have them
yeah.
all live there.
And
Lot more
most of the
control.
big celebrities lived on the lots.
And now, because of these wonderful things that we call cell phones,
yeah.
we walk around with computers and cameras.
Oh, yeah.
And anything and everything can be captured at any
Yep.
given moment. So
Right.
you have to work harder to set boundaries, I think.
Yeah,
You
it's
really
just like
do.
you were saying, a double-edged sword, because it
It is.
probably would have provided that opportunity for them to control some of their
Absolutely,
narrative, but
absolutely.
it also could have gotten you
Absolutely.
into way more trouble, like Todd was referencing. He's like, I'm
I
glad
think
there were
it's-
no cameras.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
but yeah, if I could have seen what was around the world, and I may have been in trouble. So it was better that I couldn't see that.
Thank God
You know what I
he's
mean?
honest. I
Couldn't
love
see
it.
that.
I love it. He's honest.
Yeah, I
Sure,
would've
yeah,
been
you would've been in
traveling
trouble.
everywhere. I'm like, I'm going over here, overseas. Yay! You know, something crazy.
As you guys were both so close with Gary, what is it like to revisit his story? Now, I know you both were on the documentary that had just
Yeah.
come out about him like about a year ago.
Well, it's
But-
been since September, the documentary on Peacock called
Yeah.
Gary.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, Todd made a great contribution to that. We worked very, very diligently on putting together a piece that was true,
Yeah.
that was informative, that was as comprehensive as we possibly could to get into about 90 minutes. But as it turns out, it left a lot of very significant questions, outstanding questions that,
Yep.
that needed to be answered. And that brings us now to another project that is coming forth called Lie Detector.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be airing on A&E, and it kind of picks up where the Peacock documentary left off in terms of the story of Gary's life, but more specifically his last few years of life in Utah, and the very troubled, vexed relationship that he had with this woman, Shannon Price. It's very compelling and very timely.
Wow. I
Yeah,
can't wait.
I cannot believe that Shannon chose to do this thing. I'm like, wow, that's
Yeah, because what's the
ballsy.
premise? Okay, so let's back up a minute for people that maybe don't realize and haven't seen Gary yet. Tell us a little bit about. I don't know which of you want to take that, but tell us
Well,
a
I'll
little
just
bit
say,
about.
I'll talk about this one part. The one thing I'll
Okay.
talk about is I know that Gary had a resuscitation, like leave him alone for like 15 days. And I talked to Shannon.
A do not resuscitate order,
Yeah,
like if something.
No.
were-
Dude, let's see if
Yeah.
he can come out of it for 15
Oh,
days.
okay, so
See if he
15
can
days was his order.
Yeah, see
Okay.
if he can come out of it. And I remember I talked to Shannon the day before she pulled the plug. I'm like, don't pull the plug. He says, let's see what happens in 15 days. And then the next thing I found out, she pulled the plug. And I'm like, wait a minute, she's not married to him. How is she able to pull the plug? I'm like, that makes no sense. So, I mean, personally, I don't want to say what I believe, but I think that there's something there that, you should have gave him an opportunity. Because Gary was so strong. Gary has lived through so much stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, no kidneys. I mean, I've seen Gary sick and then he comes out of it. He's done so well. I think that you just have to give him the opportunity, to come out of it.
Well, the
So,
irony was.
Let's back up just
Sure.
a little bit to set
Sure.
the stage
Sure.
so people know what he's talking about. In Gary, you get some of that, but can you give
Yes.
us an
Yeah.
abbreviated version,
Yeah.
Dion,
Of
of like how that is relevant that he was
Yeah.
on life support?
Well, piggybacking what Todd just said, Gary's prognosis when he was a kid, believe it or not, and most of the general public doesn't know this, was not to live past the age of 12.
That's right.
Oh,
That's what his prognosis was.
What
He was
was his-
born
okay, yeah.
because of his end-stage renal disease. He was born with a congenital defect with his kidneys that were atrophied. And that required that he be transplanted at age 5, which is really the only reason that we know Gary Coleman as we knew Gary Coleman.
Yeah.
Short in stature, chubby cheeks, because it was the immunosuppressant drugs that created those particular characteristics. Fast forward to his young adult life, he was doing well.
Yes.
He was doing a self-administered dialysis on set while he was doing Diff'rent
Yeah.
Strokes. The last few seasons of Diff'rent Strokes was the transplanted kidney failed, and he was doing a self-administered dialysis, but keeping himself healthy.
Yeah.
He had another transplant. It lasted only 13 months. He went back on the self-administered, and then in 1990 was required to go on to hemodialysis, which is what most people are aware of, with requiring that you go to a hospital several times per week, sit at a machine for 4 hours, and have your blood run through and cleansed. That is usually very, very challenging on the body. It takes a toll on your heart and other organs. Gary was absolutely indefatigable and victorious over this kind of a thing. The doctors kept scratching their heads saying, you are doing so much better than the average patient on this kind of a rigorous treatment for renal disease. Gary had no kidneys in his body at all from December 31st of 85, December 31st of 1985, until his death.
I
He
can
had no kidneys.
Yes.
And so with what Todd was saying in terms of his health, he took care of himself as best he could. He became compliant. And the sad thing and the sad irony is it wasn't end-stage renal disease that took Gary's life.
Wow.
Because the
At
interesting
all.
part about it, the girl that was on that vacation show with Chevy Chase, Dana, she was a good friend of mine. She passed away from the same disease, and she was only 25.
Oh,
But Gary was just, Gary made it to his 40s. That was unusual for him to make
He
it
lived
that far.
30 years
Yeah.
past the original prognosis. And again, it wasn't end-stage renal disease that killed him. And given the fact that, there were such questionable circumstances, and it is widely known that there was horrible trouble in the household.
Yeah.
I think in the last year of his life, there were more than 20 phone calls to local law enforcement for domestic violence.
Wow. Who was calling? Was Gary
Both
calling?
of them
Both of
were
them.
calling. Now, Gary could definitely fend for himself, but Todd and I both witnessed an awful lot of abuse. I was not what we would call a percipient witness visually. I never stood in the same room with Shannon Price, and that was deliberate.
But I have.
And Shannon,
But Todd,
I have.
Shannon
many
was
times.
his wife at the end of his life, and then they had divorced.
No, they were divorced.
They
She
divorced.
was not his wife.
Yeah.
They were married for 10 months.
Yep.
Only.
Okay, only 10 months.
And kept the divorce a secret. It was under seal, and that was Gary's wish. I spoke earlier about his real desire to keep his life private. His private life private.
So you think that was the motivation to
And
keep
that was the motivation. He was, quite frankly, ashamed of what he had done, another bad decision. He went into it with the best of intentions, and as things unfolded, it got to be much larger than anything he could ever begin to control on his own.
So
and Todd and I, Todd was out, they were working together at various events, promotional events and so forth, where Shannon would accompany Gary. And it wasn't good.
No.
It was
Yeah,
not
Todd,
good.
tell us what she was like, because you've actually met her, right?
Well, first of all, okay, like I remember when Gary first got out of the car. He was in a wheelchair. And
Where was this at?
This was in Tennessee.
Okay.
And Shannon runs up and just bangs Gary in the head with her purse to hug me, and I'm like, "What about Gary?" I'm like, "Geez, what are you?" I'm like, poor Gary's like, "Ah!" I'm like, "Gary." So I move her on and said, "Man, are you all right?" So, yeah. So I decided at that point I'm gonna start taking care of Gary and pushing him around the wheelchair and not gonna let her do it, because she was basically not gonna do it. She wanted someone else to do it. So I ended up taking care of Gary and pushing him around the wheelchair the whole time. And that's when the conversation came up where he goes, "Why are you doing this for me?" I said, "Man, because I love you. You're my brother." And right then it changed the whole thing, I think, about even what he thought, and he realized that, I didn't care about the past. I didn't care about what had happened and the things that were said. I didn't care about any of that. I considered him my brother, so I took care of him.
Well, and the other thing, Bettijo, the thing to Todd's point, many people have asked me, why would Gary stay in a situation that he was in with
I've
someone
wondered
like
that,
Shannon Price? And the bottom line is Gary had a lot of worthiness issues, and Todd was emphatic with him and demonstrative of his regard for Gary and his fraternal affection for Gary. And Gary did not feel like he deserved it.
Yeah.
He wanted it.
Yeah.
But he didn't feel like he deserved it.
Do you have any idea of context? I don't know if either of you do, of that interaction. Were they still married then, do you think?
No.
No, they weren't.
So that would have been
Yeah.
after the divorce,
Yeah.
but they were still together. And you think it was something where it's like, she's here, she will take care of me. I'm not sure if anybody else will. Do you think those are the kinds of things that
there are a lot of things. You're really tapping into something. Gary did not want to be alone.
Yeah.
Right.
And there is somewhere in the back of his mind, and I know this for a fact because we discussed
Well, he
it.
had abandonment issues, and that's because of his parents. You know, I remember when he went to his parents, and you could testify on this one, when he went to his parents about how much I got ripped off all that money, and his parents, basically said, well, they didn't do anything to us. So Gary was by himself at that point.
He basically had me and my family.
Yeah.
And it's challenging when I think back to the decisions that he made that he had the right to make. He was a grown man.
Right.
I had at one point played so many roles in his life.
Yeah.
One of which was it all basically spelled a parental vibe for Gary. And we created some space and some distance so that he could feel that, Dad Dion was not looking over his shoulder.
Right.
And I had to allow him to do what he felt he needed to do, even though there were some obvious mistakes. I mean, that's what you have to do.
Right. When someone else is an adult. We've talked about that,
you
right?
have
like
to
on
do
this
that.
podcast,
You
even
have
that you
to
have
do
to
it.
let people be.
But
let them,
you
that
still
book.
keep your eye on them. You still keep
Yeah.
your eye on them. And Todd and I, would speak every now and then throughout those years that he was in Utah. But near the end, we were speaking pretty frequently, and he was sharing some of this with me about the interactions with Shannon and some things that were really inappropriate and cruel and mean. And my discussions with Gary would edify all of that. I had my own experiences with her that were downright frightening. I don't mean to represent at all that I was afraid of her.
Yeah.
I was afraid of what she was doing
Yeah.
to my friend,
Yeah.
who at that point was fearful. I could tell at certain times at the beginning, just in the tone of his voice. And it wasn't about what he was saying. It was very often about what he was not telling me.
Yeah.
That gave me great pause. And then my direct interaction with her, where I actually had to tell her, you need to tamp this down or I'm going to have to step in, because this kind of abuse I'm not going to tolerate. I'm not going to be aware of it and watch you do this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I could not and did not see everything. There were things that both of them were hiding for any number of reasons.
Yeah.
But it didn't end well. And there are so many outstanding questions, legitimate questions about the wheretofores and the whys, and some things that make no sense at all, right on down to local authorities in Utah not really getting into an in-depth investigation.
No.
A thorough
Yeah.
investigation
Well, just like what
surrounding the
Todd was
circumstances.
pointing out is somebody who's your ex-wife being the one that gets to make the call if the plug is pulled. Like,
That's insane. I've never
I
heard
just
that in
keep
my
wondering
life.
who messed up at the hospital, right?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't seem like it should
But
happen.
you have to understand, and the hospital will protect itself once they find the
Right.
after fact and make sure no one can come after them.
Well-
and that's the point of it.
And the sad thing, though, again, back to Gary, and some things we still have to take responsibility for,
Yeah.
even though there are mistakes and we wish they were different. Gary did not communicate and
Yeah.
change documents that
Yeah.
he should have
Probably
updated.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Everybody do your estate plan.
You have to take
Keep that estate plan up
responsibility
to date, yeah.
for your own paperwork.
That's true.
And I hate that, but he didn't, and he should have. He should have clarified and updated.
Do you guys remember when you found out or how you found out?
I
were on the phone.
I was at a lake with my family then, and we were jet skiing, and I heard my phone ringing while I was on jet ski, and I stopped, and I answered the phone, and then they're like, oh, Gary Coleman, blah, 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 and he just passed away. And they're like, don't. My mom goes, don't go home. I'm like, why? She goes, because they have your house surrounded. It was like media. And that's where they thought Leah was my wife. They were like, our friend Leah, they thought she was my wife because she was living at the time.
Did you know, though, before he passed away, did you know he was in the hospital?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying I got the call. They're saying he was in the hospital.
Okay, I thought you were
I
saying
actually
it
called
passed.
Todd
Okay.
the day before
Okay.
and said, did you know? That Gary, and he called, Shannon was non-responsive with me after a couple of phone calls. So I said, you call her.
Yeah, and I talked to her.
And I had spoken with her only twice. We were coming at her from both
Because you guys
sides.
are basically like his family.
Yeah, and a friend of ours, John, who was, good to Gary, he also, we both talked to him, like, do not pull the plug. Give him an opportunity. Give him 15 days. See if he can come out of
Was
this.
John in Utah? Or
No,
was
John
anybody in?
John lives in L.A. He lives in Orange County in L.A.
Then it
Yeah.
got to the point for me, and then for Todd too, Shannon stopped responding.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
wouldn't take the calls.
Yeah.
And she told me very, very coldly, her exact words were, he's done. Just like that. He's done. Yeah. What does that mean? He's done. They're telling me I need to just pull the plug. And then she excused herself very quickly, and she would not provide the name of the hospital to me in terms of where he was. There were a lot of it appeared at that time, and even retrospectively, that there was some forethought here.
Yeah.
There were some things that were very deliberate about certain decisions that she made, right on down to refusing to communicate with the people who were closest to him.
That's why I can't wait to see this show.
Oh.
This lie detector show. This is going to be interesting to see what
Can
has
you
taken
believe that
place
she's
on this.
taking
I
that
can't
lie
believe
detector?
she's doing that show. I wouldn't do it. About any of my past stuff that, I got not guilty. I wouldn't do no. Are you kidding me?
Bro, I wouldn't want you to take one either.
Yeah, I'd be like, no, I ain't doing it.
I wouldn't want to see you take one
No.
either. Now, this is very serious, and I think based upon the public outcry, I've had people contact me from all over the world since watching Gary, and lots of thanks to Todd, who brought a real commitment to that story. A lot of people have expressed their frustration about the fact that more answers had not been secured. And I assure you that in this new outing on A&E with Lie Detector,
We're going to get more info.
you're going to get a lot more information.
Yeah.
I know. I wanted more, for sure, at the end of Gary. I was like, well, come on. Yeah. How long was it? Okay, so from when he was injured, how long was he in the hospital before he passed?
Before she pulled the plug, the next
About
day.
48
I
hours.
think it was like the next day.
He was.
basically,
It wasn't the next day. He was injured
This way, 'cause he was
on
in
one day, on May 26th,
Okay.
and
She
he
pulled the plug on
passed
May
away
28th.
on the 28th.
'Cause that's the day after my birthday.
Yeah,
That's
it's
why
right
I
on-
always,
that's why you
That's
were
why I
out
always remember.
voting
because it's
probably
the
was
day
your
after my
birthday.
birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was quick.
It's so tragic.
It was quick.
And like you guys were saying, he was such a fighter, and he had been through so much.
And Gary was a fighter, but there's another side of me that wonders what his spirit was experiencing in the comatose state.
Yeah.
He was so exhausted from simply trying to survive
Yeah.
under that roof.
Yeah.
And we all would have had it differently. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have wanted to see him suffer at all.
Right.
But I do not feel that this was a fair look at his exit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we know. I mean, she had the depravity of taking selfies with him on life
I've
support
seen
And the other
those,
thing
and then
is-
sold them.
and selling
Yeah,
them.
and
Yeah.
the other thing is somebody you say you love, but when you're being wheeled off to the to the hospital, you don't go with them.
No.
You let them take him, and then
No.
your brother shows up at the house to help clean the house up.
Well, she never went to the hospital until it was time to pull the plug.
Yeah.
She never went to the hospital
go.
those 48 hours.
Wow. And so she took the selfie right there before she, pulled the plug.
Yeah. Why would you stay back at the house? It's the only reason why I know I'd stay back at the house if I felt something had to be done.
Oh my
And
goodness,
even
yeah.
if someone else took the picture,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she may claim was not a selfie, why pose for it?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. It doesn't make a difference
Why
whether
pose
it was
for it?
you took it or
And
somebody
why
else.
release it?
Yeah.
You know,
I
there
mean, yeah,
were
because I have a picture with me, my brother, my sister, my mom when she was passed away. But it's not as she's laying there. It's when she's been fixed up and everything. But I would never release that.
but you haven't published it.
No, I would never do that.
And it's
You haven't published
it's
that.
infuriating, I think, for you guys too, knowing how much he valued his privacy. Right.
Yes,
So that it was
yes.
so clearly against
that
his
was so
own
against
will.
Yes. That
He
was
was-
so against what he would want.
It's
He would have been very angry over that.
I have no words
Yeah.
to describe what he would have felt. That was truly the ultimate betrayal.
Yeah.
That was the ultimate betrayal. That was beyond his losses,
yeah.
his financial losses, and
Yeah.
the battle with the parents and former business managers, et cetera, which at that point in his life had been his greatest interpersonal challenge.
Yeah.
His experience with Shannon Price was the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The worst. And this outing on A&E is definitely going to elucidate a lot of what happened.
So when
You
can
met-
we expect this to come out?
it airs July 10th
Okay.
on A&E. I believe it's 9 p.m. Pacific and Eastern time.
Well, you make sure
It's
all of our
2
listeners,
hours.
you be around because I'm gonna be watching it. I'm gonna be at home watching that. I want to find out.
I'm
the info.
participating, and I'm still going to be watching. it. So, no, this is not to be missed.
Yeah.
Not to be
Yes.
missed. I think we'll all feel a lot better about where we could be in this process of maybe
Yeah.
bringing some justice to Gary.
Yeah.
If it's just providing some more answers.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, he would want people to
Oh, yeah.
take a deeper dive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he deserves that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, dang. That was
Dang.
good.
Yeah. So our Todd flicks for the week
It's
is
the Gary Coleman
actually
documentary. Yeah.
the Gary Coleman documentary.
Oh, cool.
And get
It's
yourself
on,
ready.
It's on Peacock. It's on Peacock, and it's called Gary, and it's on Peacock. Check it out.
And then and get yourself ready so that you'll be ready when this A&E documentary comes out. You'll have all the background.
Yep.
So
Oh
Yeah, it really does set you up for the A&E piece. It really picks up where it sets you up. The Peacock documentary sets you up for the A&E piece.
yeah. And the Peacock one's called Gary.
It's
Yeah, it's
called
called
Gary.
Gary.
and then the new one that's coming to A&E is called Lie Detector.
Lie
And
Detector.
that's right. Before we
Actually-
leave, make sure that we cue in at the end of the show the Outlaw and the Indian. Dion's
All right.
special.
We'll have to get that up there. And
Make
this-
sure that's put in there, guys. The Outlaw and the Indian.
Hey, wait a minute. One more surprise.
Uh-oh, what are you wait?
While he's grabbing that, this Lie Detector is actually part of a new
Oh no, look at this.
a new true crime series. What is this?
It's the Outlaw and the Indian.
Oh my goodness.
That's
Hilarious.
for you.
Look at
Oh
that.
my
I know
goodness,
you
it's mine.
don't have one.
Yes, I don't have one.
That is an original 12-inch.
I need that. Yeah,
Okay,
my
you guys
Vinyl.
have to tell us the
That is-
story of this.
in my collection. I
can't
definitely need this for my
Now,
collection.
don't open it because
No.
that is
I'm
that's
not
a collector's.
I'm not gonna
item.
open it.
I
It
mean,
is.
So tell us what this is.
that is the 12-inch single called "The Outlaw and the Indian," not the Cowboy and the
I used to
Indian.
call it
The
The Cowboy and the Indian.
Outlaw and the Indian.
yes.
And that's actually a parody on my relationship with Gary.
Yeah.
Gary being the outlaw, me being the Indian.
Yeah.
And I'm a singer as well. And I
We got
wanted to
you,
do.
Dion and Gary right here,
Yeah.
right?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
Gary was always very supportive. He actually hated the fact that I was working for him. He hated that. You need to be out there doing your own thing. So as I began to launch into a professional recording career, he says, well, how can I help? I said, you don't sing, you know. Well, I got to do something with you. I got to do something. I said, I don't know what we can do. So
That is great.
he was in the desert one day in Palm Springs, and he calls me and he says, you know, I got something here. You know, you're always on me about how irascible I am, and you know, I'm the prankster, and I'm always getting into mischief and trouble. Okay, that's the outlaw, and you're the Indian. That's part of your bloodline, blah, 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 blah. He says, so I'm calling this the outlaw and the Indian. And I said, well, what is it? He says, well, we got to make a record. So he and I sat down and we wrote this. And so,
Wow.
because Gary doesn't sing, I sing all the hooks and so forth. But we created a whole storyline that became the premise for a cartoon that we wanted to do, a Saturday morning cartoon as they used to run them back then, and it was called The Outlaw and the Indian. And Gary does a very melodic rap throughout the whole thing, and it's really good.
Oh my
It's really
gosh.
good. I mean,
I'm so
people laugh,
excited.
and it's a sign of the times. But,
Dion weighed like 5 pounds in here. Dion weighed like 5
you might be
pounds.
able
to your 55 pounds.
Yeah, to my 55 pounds back then.
I mean, to your 10 pounds.
Yeah,
I was 5
small
pounds. He was
too.
10.
Yeah,
we
I was
were
so
rail
tiny.
thin.
Yeah, I was so
Yeah.
I might have to enlist your help too I am trying to find the buried Todd's album too, because did you know that
yeah.
Todd did an album?
You didn't know that?
I know you were recording something, but see,
it
you
never
you
came
hid
out,
that.
and it never came out.
No, it didn't.
No, what happened
you never
was-
told
what
me
happened
that
was
you did a
our-
whole record. He and Kim Fields were cutting
Yeah.
music at that time.
Yeah, I got into the Arc Records, which was a CBS subsidiary. They got into a fight with Maurice White, was the producer of it.
Oh,
and
okay.
they took all his albums
Maurice
from the company
White for
and never
all of- that was Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yep,
Oh,
never
really?
got
Founding
released.
member of
yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Never got released, and I know this.
Why
it's in
don't you know where it
because,
is?
Because I think it's in my mother's stuff, but we haven't gone through all that yet. So.
Did you actually press up some vinyl?
Oh, it was everything. The album cover was done. Everything was done.
You know what you can find? It's on YouTube.
It's on the Masters,
he performed
too.
in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade,
Yeah, one of
like
the songs.
as a coming up, like this song
Yeah.
is coming, and then it just
How
never
did
comes
I
out.
miss that?
You never saw me in the
Yeah,
Macy's
I'll
Radio
show
for
you
one of my
that.
songs? Yeah.
We'll
I
have to
just
find
heard
that
him
too.
sing around the set sometimes, and then when they did the Ebony and Ivory music show
Yeah.
on Strokes,
My voice had changed from then. It was done.
With
once my
Janet and
once
Dana.
my voice changed, it was like too tough to keep it going. And
Yeah, you
that's
gotta-
why with Michael, I heard that they were giving him some, I think, estrogen to keep his voice strong, high.
That's
like
a rumor,
But
yeah.
for mine, that's what I heard. But for mine, once I changed, it was my voice went deep and it can never come back.
You sing really good deep still.
I do
but
sing
I think
deep
it's called
better.
Summertime or something. The one that's on.
that one's
you
on
can
Summertime,
find it
yeah.
on YouTube, and it's
not Summertime
him-
and the living
No.
is easy.
It's something
Fish are
else.
jumping in the cotton.
But it's
field.
summertime, right? Isn't
Yeah,
that
it's
what called?
before everything.
That's
It's
on my
back in the
life's
70s.
to-do list. Find
Okay,
those.
I'm gonna work with you
It's
on
in my
that.
mom's
Yeah,
stuff.
'cause-
I got it.
Well,
I've never heard
has
it.
to have like
Yeah.
master copies somewhere in like their basement archive
Of course
or
they do.
something.
Of course they
CBS
do.
must have. I'm thinking
I
that
think they would
CBS
have
has
to.
it.
Yeah, but
Who's CBS
anybody
now?
who
Who
was
bought CBS?
around back in the
Probably
Stone
dead,
Ages,
yeah. Probably dead.
they wouldn't
Right.
know where
Well,
to dig that master up.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Dion, thank you for joining
Oh,
us.
it was great. It was great.
yeah.
Hey, you guys, congratulations on a fun podcast.
Oh,
Dang.
Dang.
It's a-
Dang, it sure is.
That is how we end.
Dang.
Yes. Dang. See you next time. Please like and subscribe. Talk to you later.
Yeah.
Dang is produced by my wife, Bettijo Bridges, in collaboration with Star Worldwide Network Studios, and edited by our daughter, Adelie Ann.
She's also the musician responsible for our theme music, so go check out Adelie Ann wherever you stream your music. Have a question or topic you want us to cover? Send us your suggestions at dangpodcast.com.
Do me a favor. Please subscribe and rate our podcast to make it easier for others to find. Have a great week.
Yeah,